This is the first of a series of lessons that will highlight the agencies or agents of socialization. What you see on the screen is a working definition of an agent or agency of socialization. Literally, again, whoever and whatever these agencies might be, they really enable the process of socialization to take place. Refer to pages 8 and 9 in your third study guide, because we're going to examine the first and the most significant of all of these agents of socialization, the family. But bear in mind that there are a variety of agencies. Those are just a few noted. And again, bear in mind, as these agencies work on us, they can have almost this kind of an effect. But this diagram illustrates, again, the complexity of the process. And this is only a partial listing of some of the major agencies of socialization. Of all those highlighted, the primary agency of socialization, at least in an arguable way, can be considered the family. I want you to pay attention again to the characteristics that are highlighted on the 8th page of your third study guide. There's a lot of valuable information about the family as a socializing agency found in the textbook as well. And it again can be argued that this is the most important of all of the agencies, and that applies across the board. Families are not the dominant agency, say in the United States, that they might be in a more traditional society, but they remain, again, the families remain, again, a key. Keep in mind that everywhere, families are the primary focus for procreation. This is the agency that produces children, and families have the main responsibility for socializing children during their early formative years of life. It's in the family that children establish their first real emotional bonds. It's in the family where they first learn the elements of the dominant culture, including all of the associated norms and values. Also, it's within the family that children, again, ideally receive a great deal of emotional support and develop a notion of who they are. Now, each family offers unique experiences for the children within them. For example, Robertson has noted that there's evidence of firstborn children getting more attention and discipline than children who are born later. This, in turn, may impact the later personalities of the firstborn. Generally speaking, they tend to do better in school. They tend to be higher achievers in later life, whereas younger siblings tend to be more laid back, relaxed, and sociable. Now, some socialization that takes place within the family is specific and deliberate. Remember, we talked about this earlier. Not all socialization is specific and deliberate. You want to remember in the family this is true too, because some of it can be subtle, if not downright unconscious. Robertson also notes that patterns of interaction within the family may provide models for later personality and behavior traits exhibited by children when they become adults. Most of you are probably aware of the fact that children who were abused by their parents often end up abusing their own children, and in turn, their children are more likely to become aggressive and abusive adults. Hence, personality traits may be passed literally from one generation to the next. Furthermore, keep in mind something we talked about earlier. All of us have prejudices, but for most of us, our prejudices are unconscious. We weren't aware of the fact we were learning them. Now, another reason why the family is such an important agent of socialization is that it is within the family that children receive, or to be more precise, let me use the word acquire, their specific social positions in society. Literally from birth, children have an ascribed or an assigned status in the subcultures of which their families are a part. That includes social class, ethnicity, race, religion, region, neighborhood. A significant example highlighted in the text of the relationship between the social location of the family and its impact upon how children are actually socialized comes from some research studies conducted by Kahn. And by the way, this is included now at the bottom of the 8th page and the top of the 9th page of your 3rd study guide. Keep in mind that his studies are quite fascinating in that he highlights how the occupation of the parents significantly influenced how they reared or socialized their children. And remember, occupation is a key element on which social class, I repeat, social class is based. So again, in your study guide at the bottom of the 8th page, I want you to pay attention again to working class parents and then compare how they socialize their kids, generally speaking, over at the top of the 9th page of the study guide, to middle class or white collar parents. Now you want to bear in mind again, these are generalities we're focusing on here. I don't want you to assume that this is characteristic of all middle class parents, or if you go back to the bottom of the 8th page, that this is characteristic of all working class parents. Not so, but there are some fascinating differences. For example, working class parents tend to be more likely to employ direct discipline. Communication tends to be one way from parent to child. On the other hand, research suggests again that middle class, white collar parents tend to again have a more participatory orientation when it comes to rearing their children. And the discipline they employ, notice, is more psychological, withholding love, emphasizing guilt, denying privileges, if you will. And it's a much more participatory approach. Now, at the same time, there's something else I want you to bear in mind about the relationship that could exist between the social class of the parents and how they actually socialize their children. It's the phenomenon we talked about earlier, developed by Bordeaux, cultural capital. Now, again, family socialization takes a lot of different forms. As I said before, it can be relatively simple. It can involve a wide variety of different activities. But then on the other hand, you want to bear in mind that some kids have access to socialization experiences that others don't. This is where cultural capital kicks in. Now remember what he meant by that. It's comprised of material and non-material resources considered to be important or desirable as well as useful in various social settings. Now on the one hand, it might consist of physical, material items that, in this case, parents have or have access to. These items may have great monetary value or symbolic value, and they're items that tell others something about the status or the position of the one who owns them, sells them, or buys them. A big house, for example. On the other hand, cultural capital consists of knowledge and words. These may very well, again, impact one's methods of communication, how he or she presents himself or herself to others, and how one perceives or interprets the world itself. Now, the third element of cultural capital is anything that the larger society considers to be important to success. Well, what might that be? Appropriate clothing, physical qualities like a youthful appearance, white teeth, appropriate work experience, a professional degree, the capacity to travel extensively, to visit museums, or to have access to knowledge via computers and books. Now you want to remember that cultural capital interacts with economic capital and with social capital. Now, what's social capital? Well, those are social relationships which can be potentially valuable, both socially and economically. But again, when you look at the overall class structure as such, you can recognize that who's more likely to go to exotic exhibitions like this? Who's more likely to be able to travel extensively overseas, such as in this photograph, a family visiting Peking, the People's Republic of China, or take advantage of, again, an honors institute? Well, once again, that's all cultural capital. That's again, and I want to emphasize this very, very strongly, that's again this interplay between how class can have an impact on how parents rear their children. And this is a little bit more information with respect to Cohn's study about social class differences in how children are reared. Okay? Read through that, think about it as such, because it is fascinating both in a direct and an indirect way. For example, one study noted that when asked to pick from a list of traits what was most desirable in kids, lower class parents often selected obedience and conformity, whereas middle class and wealthy parents more often selected good judgment and creativity. So keep this in mind. Don't overlook again how social class can figure into the process. And McShonis points out the fact that it might even be linked in terms of family socialization. How long does it take you to grow up? For example, working class kids usually don't go on to college and universities. They generally get a job pretty quickly after high school. Generally speaking, they get married fairly early and found a family. Now, kids from middle and upper class backgrounds tend to, or at least more likely to, go to college or to a university. Then they may decide to go on and get an advanced degree. Then they may decide, well, I really want to establish my career before I find a family. So it's entirely possible that whereas working class folks may be in a married family situation in their early 20s, it's possible that folks from middle and upper social class backgrounds, they don't do that until their early to even mid 30s. So review again the key roles here that the family play, how the family is linked, how it's tied into the process of socialization as such. And do bear in mind that in the family, control is often highly personalized. Remember when you ask your parents, why do I have to do that? What kind of response did you get? Did you get the kind of response I did? Because I said so. And as long as you live under my roof, you'll follow my rules. Now, in our next lesson, we'll take a look at another very important agency of socialization, the peer group.